This video is designed to help you implement active roles just-in-time provisioning with Safeguard. I'm going to do a quick demo. I'm going to walk through the assumptions and talk to you about how it works. Then we're going to do the preparations both in active roles and Safeguard. And then we're going to install the service, and then we will test. Here's how it works. This is my environment. I have a domain here with some user objects, and you can see that they are disabled. And I'm going to go through Safeguard, and I'm going to check out this account right here called tempdomadmin1. If I take a look at that user account, of course it's disabled, but it has only the default or the domain users group as the only group membership. So I'm going to go into Safeguard and check that account out. It's from the one identity domain. And I'm going to select the account, which is tempdomadmin1. I'm going to go ahead and check it out. It's set for auto approval. So then when I take a look at that user object in active roles, which is a look at Active Directory, you can see that the red X is gone, so the account is now enabled. But then the group membership is populated as well. So it has populated it into the SG domain admins group. And if I go do whatever I was going to do with that account, if I needed the password or if I needed a session, you can use it just like you would from any Safeguard instance. And then when I'm done, I check it back in and it reverses the process. So let me refresh right here. So the account's now disabled again. And the group membership is reverted back to the default domain users group as the only group. And that's just-in-time provisioning with Safeguard and active roles. Let's take a look at the assumptions. The first one is that you have active roles installed and are using it, and it has permissions to Active Directory. And the other assumption is that you have Safeguard installed and it can manage accounts and passwords in Active Directory. Here's how the solution works. So we have Safeguard in this environment in the upper right corner, and it is managing Active Directory or has rights to manage Active Directory. And then we have active roles in the environment. Within Active Directory, I have created an OU structure, but an OU structure is not necessary for this. So I've created a Safeguard Manage Objects OU, and I keep some groups underneath there, and the user objects that I'm going to enable privileges on or populate the group membership. The names of these are not essential, but you will just have to determine that on your own. Active roles uses a virtual attribute to populate this group membership. So an assumption that you have active roles and can use virtual attributes, even though we have scripts that'll create that automatically for you, is assumed as well. Active roles is connected to an Active Directory, and this can be multiple Active Directories as well, so it can cross many streams. It doesn't really matter if you have one or many Active Directories. And the way it works is we have the service installed on the active roles box right here. And that service is going to listen for Safeguard events. So when you saw in the video that I connected and checked out tempdomadmin1, the active roles service, or the JIT service down here, listened for that event. When it saw that event, it sent a script into active roles that populated that virtual attribute, which populated the dynamic group that I have here. And that's the basics of how it works. Let's start with the prep work in active roles. A few things you need to do in active roles. First thing you're going to need is a service account. And I have a service account created, but it's nothing special. So I've created a Safeguard managed OU structure here. And then I've created service accounts OU underneath that. And then I've just simply created this service account right here. There's absolutely nothing special about this account other than it's a standard user account. Of course, you will need to know the password for the initial implementation, and then Safeguard will take over management of this account and cycle the password for you. As you can see, it doesn't have any special permissions. There's not members of any specific groups. It's just a basic user account. We're going to give it permissions in active roles to do some things. That's the service account. Now that we have the service account created, let's go ahead and create the access templates and the virtual attribute. So there's a couple of scripts that come with it, a couple PowerShell scripts. There's an access template one, there's a virtual attribute one, and then there's the install file here. So we're going to go ahead and run the virtual attribute. I'm going to go ahead and open active roles right here. And we're going to look under configuration, server configuration, virtual attributes, and it should appear right here. So we'll go over here and we'll run the VA file. It looks like it was successful. Let's go refresh. Okay, so my virtual attribute is right here. Now let's go run the access template creation. And this access template is designed to give the service account access to the virtual attribute that was just created. And that looks like it was successful as well. So let's go take a look at that. Under access templates, it'll show up as one identity right here. And there's my access template right there. Now that I have my access template, I can permission my service account to access the accounts that it's going to make changes to. So I'm going to do that right at this level right here. Delegate control, find the service account. And I'm going to go select the access template. The permissions are now set. So now what I'm going to do is going to create a group that I can populate on a temporary basis. So let me go ahead and create that. Call it SG temp domain admin, so safeguard temp dom admin. I'm not going to put anybody in it right now. It's just going to be an empty group. And then I'm going to convert that to a dynamic group. Include by query. And I'm going to select that based on the virtual attribute and one other attribute. Got to say show all possible to find that virtual attribute. Go EDSVA right here, should show up. And I'm going to say when that is set to true, I'm going to add that. And then since I want to limit this to the domain admin's users that I've created, I'm going to take the SAM account name. And I'm going to say starts with SG temp dom, like this, because that's what my account names are built to look like. So two conditions to be in this group is the account name must start with SG temp dom, and the virtual attribute must be set to true. So we add the rule, and now we have a dynamic group, and you can create as many dynamic groups as you need to match up to different user accounts or sets of accounts that you need. Now that Active Roles is configured, I'm going to step over into Safeguard and make some configurations there. There's three different types of accounts that you can use to authenticate to Safeguard to do this. The first one would be a username and password. Of course, username and password is not ideal because the password will be in the config file. The second type is through a thumbprint, and then the third type is through a certificate file. In this case, I'm going to do the thumbprint, and I'm going to do this from a Windows system. To do this, I'll need to import the certificate to the local profile of the service account that we use in Active Roles. So to do that, I need to log on as that service account. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the safeguard interface to have that up and ready for me. I'm going to log on as a safeguard administrator. Okay, that's ready to go. Let's park that over here out of the way. Now I've saved some commands for the OpenSSL to create the certificate file. And I have that over here in my folder. So cert user instructions. I can leave this on the screen for a minute if you just want to copy that. And I'm going to launch OpenSSL for Windows right here. Again, back to the screen. You can pause right here if you want to copy that. In this case, I've got my domain name and my server name right here. The rest of this can be whatever you want it to be. So I'm going to take my first command right here, drop that into my OpenSSL prompt. So wrote a private key. We'll be able to see these files generate over in my own profile on my Windows machine here. So it should be right here. So here's the files that it just generated. We're going to use those here in a minute. Then we generate the thumbprint. And I'm going to take this line right here and copy that because I'm going to need that. Cool. All right, I have it pasted. Then we're going to go get the last command. We're going to get the last command and paste it in here. Put a password on it. Okay, should have created the other file. There it is right there. So we're done with OpenSSL. You can minimize these files and minimize this. So now I'm going to go into the local certificate store for the user. I'm going to import the certificate right here. Go browse to that file. I'm going to change this to all files and take the PFX file. Same password you used. Just going to put it in the personal store. Should be done with that. Now we'll go into Safeguard. We create a user for that. Again, I'm logged on as an administrator here, so I have the right to create users. I create a new user. Identity provider is going to be local. Give it a name that means something to you. And then we're going to go to the Authentication tab. We're going to change that to Certificate. This is where we're going to bring that thumbprint over. And we're going to make it an auditor. It's the only role it needs. Now the user's created. So the other thing we have to do in Safeguard is we have to import that into the local certificate store as a trusted certificate. Go over into the certificates interface. Trusted certificates. And we're going to bring in that certificate. Same password. And now we have the user created in Safeguard. As an additional step, I like to validate that the user certificate will authenticate that user into Safeguard. So I'm just going to close my other Safeguard interface and open it up as a new user here. And I'm authenticated with that certificate. So I'm going to check certificate here. Instead of my username and password, I'm going to say login. It's going to let me choose the certificate. It's in the local store. And that was successful. So now I have logged into Safeguard with the service account using a certificate. Now we need to switch back to our other account. We're done with this profile on the Windows machine, so we can close this up. Now all the prep work is done and we're ready to install the service. So I have the installer file over here on E. Folder right here. This is the installer, but I'm going to run it from the command line with admin rights. It's going to prompt you here to insert the thumbprint, so we're going to open Safeguard and paste it out of there. We got some options on the installer, so the best option here is run as a service. The password config, again, is only for debug purposes. This is the virtual attribute that we created earlier in active roles. If you didn't change the name of the virtual attribute, you can just go with the default here. If you created your own virtual attribute, you can just enter the name of the virtual attribute here. Need the IP address of the Safeguard appliance. This is the 3 different types of authentication. So again, you've got thumbprint, certificate, and password. I'm going to choose thumbprint right here. I'm going to open up my Safeguard instance and paste that thumbprint out of there. Let's go find that user we created. Here's the user right here, double click. I'm going to go to the authentication tab and just grab this thumbprint right here. Going to get a warning that it's not in a local user, but it's actually in the service account profile, so that's fine. So now it's installed. Click Finish. You minimize here, get these out of the way. So now what we should see is over in the Windows Services, it should be installed as a service. And this is it right here. You'll see it sets to run as local system. We're going to switch that to the user account, the service account that we created. Now it's important here that this service account is actually managed by Safeguard. So be sure you enroll both the account from Active Directory and this service in Safeguard so that it can be managed so that no person knows the password on this account. And now your install is complete. So let's give it a test. So I'm going to open up Active Roles right here, and I'm going to take a look at one of my accounts that I've created. And it's disabled, and it's not a member of anything other than the domain users group. So when we go into Safeguard to check out that account, it should populate that group membership for us. And we'll take just a password from the domain for now. And we'll take domain admin 1. Submit the request. Pending account restored. It's just restored. So if we come over here and look, the account's now enabled. And is a member of the DOM admins group. So the install was a success. And that completes your install.